Hello everyone and welcome to Music Theory with GUIM. In this installment we're going to be exploring a bit of Ravel by looking at one of his early songs, Saint. We're only going to be looking at the initial measure, but the concept explored is found all throughout the song. Before we see what Ravel actually composed, let's consider the following harmony. We have A minor, C major 7, F major 9, and again C major 7. We would look at this as being set in the key of A minor, and as such would analyze this as a simple diatonic progression. We have the 1, flat 3, and flat 6 with extensions placed on the latter 2. Nothing strange here, it's smooth and straightforward. Well, now let's consider changing a single note. By doing so, the overall mood of the harmony will change, and it will go from being a smooth, diatonic progression to one carrying a rather bold flavor of tension. Not only that, but rather than being a tension we're used to, it's presented in a rather different manner. So let's listen to this harmony again and see if we hear the change. As you probably noticed, the change occurred on the 3rd chord, and it changed from F major 9 to F9. So what was once a simple analysis is now something quite peculiar. F9 is a dominant chord, yet it's not really acting as such. We see no resolution to any sort of B-flat chord, nor progression to what can be referred to as a substitution of B-flat, such as G minor. Instead, we have C major 7. So what's happening here? Well, we could call this simply a moment of chromatic harmony for the sake of color, or perhaps refer to this as an instance of modal interchange by way of allochrion. Either way, we can call it non-functional and move on with our business. Except I couldn't move on, and instead I asked how we could analyze this harmony and what it could mean. So I looked at how the notes were moving, and what I came to rest upon is that F9 isn't really F9, but is instead inharmonically in F9. Now, if you're worried I'm about to present an E-sharp dominant 9 chord, fret not. Instead, what I am proposing is that E-flat isn't really E-flat, but is instead D-sharp. This means that F9 isn't really F9, but is instead an extended German augmented 6th. And seeing D-sharp, the augmented 4th of A minor, in conjunction with F, the flat 6th, is far more likely than a diminished 5th, especially since a flat 2 chord isn't following. Now, the problem you might be thinking is that an augmented 6th precedes the 5 chord, correct? The 5 of A is E rather than C, so in order to call this an augmented 6th, the progression should be as follows. Normally, yes, an F augmented 6th chord would proceed to an E major. More fundamentally, however, is that an augmented 6th interval built from F would resolve to E. Well, let's check the source and see if that's what's happening. We see that F9 is voiced with 2 Fs. And where do they go? Well, the lowest F leaps up to C, but the highest F does no such thing. Instead, it steps down by a semitone to E. Well, now let's look at E flat. In the music, we see that E flat is followed by E natural, which means that if we respell the note with D sharp, we're seeing D sharp to E. This means that both F and D sharp are resolving in contrary motion to form an octave built on E, or in other words, the augmented 6th interval is resolving as expected. The difference here is that the overall chord structure is something different. Rather than the octave be the root of the following chord, it is the third of a chord. And though this might seem absurd to consider, remember that this is late 19th century harmony and is also French, which tends to be very coloristic. Furthermore, Ravel is not even the only one to broaden the usage of augmented 6th chords. Another very well-known user of non-traditional resolutions for the augmented 6th is Schubert, and he preceded Ravel by almost 80 years. Nevertheless, Ravel has built an augmented 6th atop the flat 6 scale degree and just resolved it to something other than the 5 chord. And if this works really well, then I'm sure you're asking, what else can we resolve the augmented 6th chord to? Well, this is something that I wanted you to explore on your own. And in terms of triads, here are some basic options. E major and C major are, of course, 2 of those options, but we can also have E minor and C sharp minor, as well as A major, A minor, and A sharp diminished. And you might also be thinking of A flat augmented, which is certainly a viable triad, but in this case will most likely end up sounding like an E augmented triad, and more specifically an E major with a flat 6 to 5 suspension, meaning C, the 5th of the augmented 6th, is suspending over E major. As a result, it will most likely not sound like an unusual resolution for the augmented 6th in this context. And then you can try to expand upon this and ask, well, what if E is the 7th, or the 9th, or the 11th, or the 13th? Anyways, explore these options on screen and try out some other ones as well if you so wish. That said, some of these options might require a bit more preparation than others, such as resolving F9 to C# minor. Of course, I also definitely recommend you look into how Ravel uses this material in Saint so that you can have a more concrete example of this application in full. And if you would like to investigate the sheet music yourself, you can find a link in the description below. The first measure will be the harmony found in this video, but remember that the chord will be spelled with a flat 7 and not a sharp 6. And again, I know for some musicians, my using the augmented 6 as a way to describe the harmony might be perceived as wrong. So if you have any thoughts or questions, definitely drop a comment below. Also, if you'd like to see any other music by Ravel explored, feel free to leave suggestions. In the meantime, thank you for watching another episode of Music Theory with GUIM.